I hear all your boisterous cheers. Private equity firm bought Greyhound Bus Company and is closing bus stations nationwide, affecting 60 million Americans. So let's take a look, see here. The new ownership of the Greyhound by a private equity firm, which has resulted in the closure and relocation of bus terminals away from the city centers, has significant concerns about the accessibility of inner city bus travel, particularly for low income and mobility challenged individuals. So, again, poor people generally are the ones who take the Greyhound bus and rely on it to get city to city. Um, they have been closing them, which they normally are in some of the worst parts of downtown areas. I've been in Salt Lake City, it's right in the worst part of town. In Reno, Nevada, it's right in the worst part of town. In Denver, it's in a fairly not very good part of town. Uh, they serve to get to people to main hubs where you could get to a major city and connect to public transportation, go on your way, whatever. What they're doing is private equity is coming in, buying them, and basically shutting them down and moving them to the outskirts of town. Doesn't sound like a good thing. The acquisition of 33 Greyhound bus terminals by a subsidiary of Alden Global Capital. It's very evil sounding. Oh, he says like the bad guy in the movie works for Allen Global Capital for $140 million. This has prompted fears about the impact of accessibility of transportation for these groups, leading to calls for increased public sector involvement in supporting intercity bus access. That is going to force cities and towns and everything to actually spend more money to make sure that the people getting off at the Greyhound station have access to the subway, the buses system, the airport. I mean, it's bad enough a lot of airports are really far away and that there's not access. Denver International Airport was like that for a long time. I guess they have shuttles or whatever, but there's no train that'll take you all the way out there. And they put it in a fucking cornfield anyway. I don't know why, but the old one was Stapleton Airport. It was over closer to downtown Denver. But they are really betting on a future where we can spread out and we can drive an hour to go to the mall and drive an hour to go to work. Not unsustainable whatsoever. Americans. The closure and relocation of Greyhound bus terminals had a tangible effect on the accessibility of intercity bus travel, as I said. For instance, the shutdown of the downtown Greyhound station in Tampa, Florida, and the subsequent relocation to the top area characterized by crime and lack of lighting has raised safety concerns for passengers, including families and children, of course. But nobody cares about poor people, let's be honest. They shuffle us around and poison us with horrible food and stick us in the most polluted, crime-infested areas because you have to pay in America to have the privilege to not have a stray bullet come through your living room or have the police knock down your door and shoot your dog. Furthermore, the closure of centrally located Greyhound bus terminals across the U.S. has made it more challenging for individuals, especially those with limited mobility. Um, generally, people who have certain disabilities can't get on airplanes. Have people who have fear of flying, people who there's medical conditions where you could have an aversion to, heart conditions. You can't go up in the plane, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but definitely, like all the kids would say, that's ableist. That's ableist. Yeah, I agree. It is. The sale of Greyhound's assets to a private equity firm has also led to the unraveling of the nation's bus network, with stations closing and buses forced away from connections to other buses and Amtrak. So they're separating Amtrak, that's our train system there, and from. So it's about isolation, I guess, but it's definitely not about what's best for the people, right? We can all agree on that. It's not for what's for the best of the people. This is market-driven economics at its best. That says it doesn't matter how it functions as long as it makes tons of money. It can be exploitative. It can be what would you call it? It's exploitative. It tries to make as much money as it possibly can. Um, that's not a society that's worth participating in. if it's profit driven, because ultimately this is what you get: dead grandmas and poor people stuck in the middle of nowhere to starve to death or whatever. Um, Isolation and segregation of poor people away from the people who have enough money. This has always been part of the American way of life, especially since we have so much space to do so. Um, in Germany, that would not fly as well if people knew uh, exactly what was going on. Like the politics in Europe work a little bit differently because everybody's so close together, and a lot of people in the United States can get away with murder, and bury the body in the woods. It's not so easy here. You air out your dirty laundry, somebody's going to smell it. So them selling off these connections, isolating everybody, had particularly adverse effects. Approximately 60 million annual riders, which are low income, disabled, or elderly, which another aspect of it was elderly people. Like my grandpa, he rode the Greyhound bus. He wasn't a fancy man. He was a poor man and a washing machine repairman from Alabama. Nothing special, just an average Joe. He used to take the Greyhound bus all the time because he said, I don't mind the Greyhound bus, because even though they say you can die in the bus easier than in the plane, he said, well, the bus doesn't plummet out of the fucking air, 70,000 feet or whatever, 30,000 feet, something like that. My grandpa, hell of a guy. So the concerns around the sale of Greyhound and their assets to private equity firms kind of highlights a greater pattern of what's been going on, where the end stages of capitalism, what we call late stage capitalism, is when they move in and everybody who was ever rich now officially owns everything. They've got regulatory capture. They've captured the regulators. They've captured the media companies. All corporate and business interests control everything that used to be sort of public. They take public land and turn it private. They turn public waterworks and stuff like that, turn it private. Everything is now in their hands. And it's like the last stages of monopoly, when you just go around the board and continually getting sodomized by whoever happens to be holding all the property deeds. This is where we're at in the American way of life. It's late stage capitalism. It's the end of the game, and there's nothing left but for already very powerful people to merge together and become even more monopolized, forceful entities. And they're going to keep doing that until it's just like one big entity. It's just like Google owns everything, including toilet paper that you wipe your ass with, to colleges that you go to are all Google colleges. This could happen. This is what the free marketers, this is their wet dream, is essentially to build little communities and towns that are sparsely populated, little enclaves of loyal tech workers who, come in and come out. What was that episode of The Simpsons with Hank Scorpio, where he's got the Globex Corporation or whatever? A shady, super international, multinational corporation who, if you pledge your allegiance to, will give you a fantastic house in a neighborhood that's virtually crime-free. The ultimate dream of the free market libertarian. Well, it turns out that the effects for us, poor people, aren't so good. And it amounts to some kind of slow genocide, or what Frederick Engels would say, social murder. Not great. Accessibility of transportation, especially for vulnerable groups, should be something that is out of the hands of commercial interests, along with other things. When they privatized water in the UK in the 1980s, that was Margaret Thatcher's big idea. That backfired. at least for the people. The rich people got richer and got to control the waterworks. But what they did was, again, cut costs. And pretty soon the water bill was 3 times higher and had record amounts of raw sewage in it. So that's capitalism. That's late stage capitalism. That's where we're going. That's where we're at. And it'll continue to go like this. Like I said before, too, private equity firms have merged fast food restaurants and a lot of brick and mortar shops in, your basic fucking suburban shopping center USA. Um, Also, like I said at the top, the nursing homes, which was a more egregious example where they don't care about old people, not as much as they care about babies, who they'll sell. Johnson & Johnson will sell baby powder that had talc in it that ended up being totally toxic and poisonous and giving people cancer, and then tried to hide it, and then went to court to fight it after they couldn't hide it anymore. So another example of capitalism and more to the point, late stage capitalism. Not the nicest flavor milkshake you ever had. The closure and relocation of these terminals has been crippling, and there's no reprieve on sight on the horizon at all that these groups are going to be stopped or that any government agency is going to come and rein them in. So there you go. That's the story. If you guys have other, stories about hearing about private equity firms and what they got their hands into, let me know, because I'm kind of curious myself to know how deep the rabbit hole goes and how bad it's going to get. Even stuff like I remember growing up, Chick-fil-A or any of these crummy, not, all of a sudden they're merged and it's all one company or something, It's like, we sell thumbtacks, chicken sandwiches, life insurance, and dildos. It's like, okay, that's what it is now. Okay. There you go, folks. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And if you want to read along here, I'll send you the link. This is just some garbage I put together here. It's nothing special. Doesn't say anything more than I just told you. But yeah, let's move on to something more exciting. Oh, tofu va bien. I know what that means now because I speak a little bit of French. Oh, yes, my friend. I've learned French. I'm catching up to the civilized world. Long time no see. I'm so glad to see you. I was wondering. I thought you were mad at me.